Hey everyone, I hope you all are safe and doing good. So, till now we have discussed two types of control flow statements in Java. One is decision making statements, in which if and switch statement comes, and next is looping statements, looping structure that is for while and do while loop. So, the third type of control flow statement is jump statements, and in which break, continue, and return statement comes. So, in this lecture, we will see what is break statement and what is continue statement. Return statement basically we use with methods. So after completing control flow statements, in the next chapter we'll start methods in Java. Then we will discuss return statement in detail, right? So in this lecture we will see what is break statement, what is labeled break, then what is continue statement, and then what is labeled continue statement with examples, right? So first one is break statement in Java. So somewhat you are aware about break statement because we have used this in switch. I hope you remember that thing in switch statement when we're using case, like case 1, case 2, or any cases, case A or case B, or case we can use string also, something like this. There within each case we use break. And why we use break? To prevent the fall through behavior of that switch. If you do not put that break in the cases, then the control, okay, this switch cases will going to execute till the control will execute the next statement, whatever is there in that switch, till break is found or till end of the switch. This thing we have seen what is fall through behavior and all in detail when we were discussing switch statement. So there, why we use break? To exit from the switch completely. If any matched case is found, whatever is there in that case, that line or that block would be executed, and then after finding break, completely exit from the switch statement. No further cases, if there is any, would be executed, right? So why we use break? To completely exit from the switch. So break, the basic mechanism of break, you know why we use break. So break statement is basically used to exit a loop or a switch statement prematurely, means without completion of the loop or without completion of the switch. If a certain condition found, you want to exit from that loop or from that switch, I don't want to complete further the loop iteration, then we can use break prematurely if you want to exit from a loop or a switch. Like when I go to shopping, when I went to shopping for to buy this like black t-shirt, so I was having in my mind that specific condition or specific specification that the t-shirt should be black and off collared. So as soon as I found this t-shirt, black t-shirt, I stopped searching further. I just went to billing counter and exit from that mall. So like this, if a specific condition is met, based on that, if you want to exit from that loop prematurely or from that switch prematurely, we can use directly break, right? No further execution would be there within that loop or within that switch, right? I'll tell you, we'll discuss this thing with the what you can say example also with program, don't worry. So we use break basically primarily for two reasons. If you want to exit a loop when a certain condition is met and avoiding the unnecessary iteration. After that, I don't want to iterate that loop more. So just exit. Or to exit a switch statement after executing the desired case, preventing the fall through behavior. In these two cases, basically, primarily the break statement is to be used. Okay. Okay, this thing you need to remember. Break cannot be used with simple if statement. If you want to use something like this, if, and here we have some condition or the Boolean expression. Within this, I want to use break. This will give error. Directly within if we cannot use. Yeah, but if this if is enclosed within a for loop or any loop, for while, do while, or within a switch statement, like it is within a for loop, then it's fine, it will work, right? But if there is no loop here and here, directly you are using this, directly you are using this within this if, this is wrong, this is not allowed, right? Because if statement do not create a block that needs to be broken. These are simple conditional statements. If this condition true, execute whatever you write here, and otherwise else, something like this, right? So I hope the basic meaning of break is clear to you. Now here is one example. Break in while loop. This is in while loop and this is in do while loop. Generally we every time we see example of for loop, but here we have while and do while. What you need to do, if you got the idea what this break will do, then right now pause the video and tell me, I mean think what output it should give and what output it should give. Pause the video and try this out. So I hope you have done this. Now see, let's dry run this. So here we have int I. This is a declaration statement, right? Generally these kind of statements we call as a declaration statement, and these are not executable statements in Java. Don't think these statements would be executed. There is difference between declaration statement and executable statements. When we use those labeled break and labeled statement, then you will get it, right? Because here that thing we will see when we'll discussing labeled kind of thing. Here simply the memory would be allocated, there would be no processing or no action would be performed, right? So this is not executable statement, right? Now memory would be allocated, that is I to this, and here we have 0 in this I. While true means condition true, enter here. If I is equal to 5, is this condition true? No. So we will not enter in within this if. Whatever is there within after this if, control will go there. So after this we have written, we are printing I, so the 0 would be printed and I plus plus. Now I becomes 1, right? Again, say after this, again condition would be checked, that is true. Obviously that would forever be true. If this condition true, no. Again simple here, print I, that is 1 and I becomes 2. Again true, this condition is not true. Again I would be printed, that is 2 and I plus plus. Again 3 would be printed and I plus plus. Now 4 would be printed and I plus plus. Now becomes 5. Now go to here. I plus plus, I is equal to 5. Yes, condition true. Now break. If this condition true, then only the control will enter within this if block, and within this if we have break. Break means whatever is there, the enclosing loop of this break. Here we have this while loop. Out of this complete loop, so this loop is from here to here, like from here to here. Means right now after break, the control will be directly here and there is nothing out there. So simply 0 to 4 would be printed. That's it, right? So in general cases, when we're doing some projects or exercises, there we use while loop. We don't know number of iterations in advance, then we use while loop and simply we set here like true. So this condition would always be true. How to stop this loop? Within that loop, we will put some condition, some specific condition. Whenever that condition would be met, just break from that loop. So this is one way to exit from that while loop. If you are that loop is forever true, in that case using break we can exit. Okay, so this is the case. Now what is in do while loop? Here we have j. So there is a variable j, 0 would be assigned. Now do, there is no condition because this is do while loop, exit control loop. Now is this condition true? No. So control would be here. Now a 0 would be printed, then j plus plus. Now j becomes 1. Now after, while exiting the loop, the condition would be checked. J is 1. So j less than 5. Yes, condition true. So again control would be here. Is this condition true? No. So there is no break. Control would be here again. And on the screen 1 would be printed, j plus plus. Now j becomes 2. Now condition would be checked. 2 less than 5. Yes, condition true. Again enter here. This condition is not true. Again j would be printed, that is 2. J plus plus. Now j becomes 3. Right? Now while exiting, condition would be checked. Now 3 less than 5. Yes, condition true. Again we will enter here. But now, is this condition true? J equal to 3. Yes. Now this time this condition is also true. Now control will enter here. Enter here. Here the control will get break. Break means out of this do while loop. Out of this do while loop. Out of this do while loop. And what after that there is nothing. So At 3, just stop, and this would be the output. 0, 1, and 2. 3 would not be printed because we are out of this do while loop. So control will never get to this line when j becomes 3, to this println line. So this is how break statement will work, right? Although we are using this break within if only. See, if but this if statement is enclosed within a loop, here with while loop, here with do while loop. So basically we are using break within loops, right? Simple if there is no loop and you are directly using this if with this, that would give you error, right? Okay. Now one thing is, although we haven't discussed the concept of nested loop, but for this video let me just tell you, nested means loop within a loop. So here we have one loop. This is one simple example. This nested loop concept we will be discussing when we will discuss that pattern printing questions. Don't worry, right? So for that, you just understand nested loop means a loop, any loop, and within this we have one more loop or maybe one more loop. So this nesting can be up to many level. Loop within loop is known as nesting of loops, right? Now, see, break statement while working with the nested loops, then there is one thing. This is one example. Here we have one loop, right? I is equal to 0 till 3 I plus plus, and within this loop we have one more loop, for loop. Here we have a variable j. J is from 0 to 3 and j plus plus. Now within this inner loop we have one condition. If I is equal to 1 and j equal to 1, then you have to break. Simply print this line, breaking inner loop and break. So now the question is, the control will exit from which loop? From this inner loop or from that completely outer loop? This is the case when you are using break with nested loops. Okay, so now in this case, the break will exit. I means as soon as the break will be encountered, means the control will exit from the innermost loop. So the control will exit only from this loop, innermost loop, not from the outer loop, right? So in this case, see, first let me just try run this for you, or you can just pause the video and try run this program. This is not that much tough. If you have the idea now, we have you know now how this control will go from line to line and how to dry run, because we have dry run many programs. So you can dry run this. See, I is 0, condition true, yes, you will enter here. Now j is again 0, this condition true, yes, now enter here. Is this condition true? No, this condition is not true. I equal to 1 and this. So we will not enter into this if block and directly control will be here. So I value would be printed, that is 0, j value would be printed, that is 0. Fine. Now we are still within this inner loop. So now control will go here because these lines are within this inner loop. So control will go here, j plus plus. Now j becomes 1. Check the condition true. Yes, but this condition is not true. So again would be printed as 0 and 1, I and j. Again control will go here, j plus plus. J becomes now 2. Is this condition true? No. Again I and j would be printed, that is 0 and 2. J plus plus. J becomes 3. Is this condition true? No. Now exit from the inner loop because condition is not true, right? So we are out from this inner loop. Out from this inner loop means now the next iteration of the outer loop. Now I plus plus. So now at this point of time I becomes 1. Check the condition true. Yes. Enter here. Again j would be initialized with 0. So now again for the next iteration or the second iteration of outer loop, j again would be becomes first 0. This condition true? Yes. Enter here. I equal to 1. Yes, this condition is true. And j equal to 1. But this condition is not true. So the complete condition will give you false. Means this is not true. We will not enter here and we will simply print 1 and 0. I and j value. Now j plus plus. We are still within inner loop. Now j becomes 1. Is this condition true? J less than 3? Yes. Enter here. Now this condition is true. Both I and J are 1. 1, 1. Yes. So we'll enter here. And this line would be printed first here. This line would be printed breaking inner loop. And then simply break. So it will simply break the inner loop. Within this loop, whatever if there is any next statement that would not be executed, and it will simply break the inner loop. No next iteration would be done. So break means we are out from this loop, inner loop. So this inner loop would be from here to here. So there is no I and J would be printed. We are completely out from here to here. This is from inner loop. So this line is within the inner loop. So we are exit. We are out of this. Out of this means we are within still outer loop, but we are out from inner loop. Now I becomes plus plus. I becomes now 2. Now again same condition would be there. And this condition, next whatever is there, that would be printed like I is equal to 2, then J again 0, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 2, and something like this. Right? This would be the output. But now what? What if I want to exit? If a specific condition met within the inner loop, but still I want to exit completely from the outer loop as well. But if you use simple break, I have told you the working of this break. You will exit only from the inner loop. You will not exit from the outer loop. But what if some scenario is there, some nested loops are there, but within the inner loop you have written some specific condition, and if that condition met, you want to exit from all the loops, from outer loop as well. Then how to achieve this thing? For that we have one more advanced break, that is labeled break. Then we use labeled break. Okay. So I hope this working is clear to you. See, while working with nested loop, the break statement only exit the innermost loop containing it. If there is one more loop, one more for loop, and that this break is within this loop, third loop, then this break will only exit from the inner loop, this loop. We are still within this loop and this loop. This kind of thing. Right? Okay. Now let's see how labeled statement work. And then we will see practically both break and labeled break. So label means what? See, if somewhere you got the label, like on my t-shirt, it's like Jenny's lectures, it's like a label. Just identify, okay, this t-shirt is for like Jenny's lectures, something like this. On a dress or somewhere, we put label just to identify that thing, right? That's just a label, right? So label is nothing but in Java or in programming languages, it should be a valid identifier. Valid identifier means name of any variable or method or class. And there are some rules, naming rules of variables, right? That can only contain digits from 0 to like 1, alphabet, ABCD, small ABCD, capital ABCD, and can only have like that underscore or one sign is underscore or one sign is dollar sign. Nothing extra like white space cannot contain, it cannot contain white space. So the same rules would be applied to this also. When you name a label, same rules would be applied. The label cannot start with like a number. Same rule, right? So see here, same example we have taken, previous example. But now we have labeled this loop, the outer loop. The name of this loop is outer loop and just colon. So this is how you label it. It's nothing but a label is nothing but it's an identifier and followed by a colon. See, followed by a colon. That's it. So this is a label. Now we have labeled this for loop, outer loop. If you want to label this loop, you can also label like this loop. You can write inner loop and colon. That's it. Right? I want now, if this condition met, I want to exit from the outer loop as well, from all the loops. So rather than simply using here break, we use labeled break. And how to write simple syntaxes? Simply we write break keyword, and after that, whatever the label you want to use, you have used. So the label is outer loop. So here I have simply written outer loop. So in this case, when this condition met, we will be exiting from the complete outer loop as well. Out. There would be no next iteration of the outer loop. I'll tell you, we'll see practically what output, the difference between output of this labeled break and simple break. But I hope the general meaning of labeled statement is clear. So this is why this is known as labeled statement. It's not like that you can name a for loop only. You can name any while loop, do while loop, or are any if statement as well. You can name that. Or simply a block. Simply I have a whatever is there within this, and I within this block I want to name this block. Suppose label. So I have named this block also. But this label, we cannot label the declaration statement, because declaration statement is not executable statement. You can label only executable statements, those who are executable statements, or a block of code, or any executable statement in Java, or loops, if else. If simply you declare any variable, int I, this kind of thing, and after the before that you want to use any label, that will give you error. I'll show you that thing also. Right? So that's why these are known as labeled statements. And there is also scope of labeled statement. The scope of this label is, this is label is for this outer loop. So the scope of this outer loop, this label is from here to here. Okay. If suppose I want to label this loop also, suppose I have labeled this inner loop and this, right? And this inner loop scope is from here to here, right? So after this, here, after enclosing the inner loop, if you want to use this, after that, if you want to print some condition, if some condition, and I want to use this one, like break inner loop, then it will give you error. So this label is also having their scope. You cannot use, it's not like that you can use this label anywhere in the program. You can use that label within its scope only. Like variables are having their scope. In the previous video, we have seen this thing. Right? So this is basically useful in the scenario where you need to exit multiple levels of nested structure. There are many nested structure. Within loop, we are having one more loop, or something like this. Or maybe switch, nested switch. And you want to exit all the nested structure, all the nested loops, or all the nested switch statement based on a specific condition. Then we can use labeled break. Okay. Now, obviously, they are going to increase the readability of the code also, because we have named this for, and we are writing here break outer loop. So from the here only, by looking at that, we know, okay, there is a label outer loop, and from there you want to exit. So this is more readable rather than writing simple break. So you have to check, okay, this break is within this loop. Okay, so we have to exit from this loop. But here we have simply label, get this label. Okay, this is the label. So from this loop, we want to exit. So this is, I guess, more readable, right? And yeah, I've told you there is label scope as well, and it is going to improve the readability. That's why we use like labeled statements somewhere. So let's now discuss this thing with the help of program, and then we will see continue and labeled continue statements. So now in our first project, we are going to create a new Java class. And as we are discussing here, what jump statements, break and continue. So we just name it jump statements. And I hope you know now how to use break basically in switch. We have discussed already in switch. So let's just write down main here. And no need to write down here program for switch statements, because that thing we have already seen in switch, in traditional switch, how to use break. In switch expression also we have used. So let me show you. First, let's see what is here. We have switch enhancement. So here we were using the enhanced switch. with arrow labels and switch expression. So here the break is implicit. No need to write down here explicitly break statement, right? So the break is implicit already in arrow labels. Fine. But in traditional switch, you have to write down break to prevent the fall through mechanism. As you can see this in the switch demo. Here in every case, almost we have written break. Otherwise, it will show some fall through behavior. It will keep repeating until it finds a break or the exit of the switch. Okay. So we'll not write down the program for switch here. We'll simply do what? We'll simply discuss this jump statement with loops. So at first, we simply print number from 1 to 10. Simple program, let's take. I is 1, I less than equal to 10, and then let's do I plus plus. And if I becomes 5, if I is 5, then we are going to break. So if I is 5, let's just break the loop from here and simply print here whatever the value of I is. That's it. So now let's run this. Here we have to select current file and run this. So now what output you will get here? It will give you output 1, 2, 3, 4. Because as soon as it becomes 5, break. Break means the control would be out from the loop only, from the enclosing loop. No next iteration would be there. So this line system.out.println I would not be iterated or would not be printed for I is equal to 5 and 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, because we have encountered break here. One more thing I just want to show you. After break, if you write any line, then that is unreachable code. It will give you error. So this thing also you need to take care. After break or continue within the same block we are writing in this if. So this thing is not allowed within the same block. So you have to avoid this. We cannot write down here any statement after break, because break means just exit from the loop, right? Okay, there is one more thing. We cannot, I've told you directly with simple if we cannot use break. So let me show you that thing also. Let's just comment out this code and let's take a simple example. Here we are taking any variable a, assigning a value to 5, initializing this a. Then in if we simply write a is equal to 5, then we can print here I and simply break. But it will give you error. Here also it's not I, it's a. Sorry. So you have to write down a here. Now see here a red line break. Break outside switch or loop means this if is not within any switch statement or loop statement. It's simple if. But here in this case, we are using if within for loop. So in this case, break is allowed, but in this case, break is not allowed. So it will give you error. In simple if, we cannot use break. Yeah, we can use labeled break, but that is a different case. I'll show you that thing also when we'll discuss labeled break. Right? So I hope this is clear to you. We can use switch in break in switch as well as in loops, for while or do while loop, but not in simple if statement. Okay. So now let's discuss this with nested loops. So these are we are taking here nested loops. One loop is this thing we have already seen on the board also. The same example I'm taking here. And here we are simply printing if I is 1, j is 1, then simply print breaking inner loop and break. And after that we are writing I and j. So outer for loop is I from 0 to 3, then j is from 0 to 3, and this is the if condition, then break, and then simply print this thing. Right. So this break will only exit from the innermost loop. The innermost loop is this loop, not the outer loop. Outer loop iteration would still be there. So if you run this and you will see the output, see now. I0, J0, then 01, then 02, then 10. And as soon as I was 1 and J becomes 1, then the condition was true. And within that condition, what we are printing? Breaking inner loop. So it will simply print breaking inner loop and no values would be printed. Like I1, J1, this value would not be printed here. Because next, and after that, next iteration. I was 2, then J is again 0, 1, 2, and I is 2. So this is the output when you are using simple break with nested loops, right? We are simply exiting from the inner loop only. So this is the inner loop. So once you find break, we will exit from the inner loop. That's why the system.out.println I, would value would not be printed in this case once I becomes 1 and j becomes 1. Now let's use labeled break. I want to exit from the outer loop as well once the given condition is true. So for that you have to use labeled. So I'm just giving labeled name outer loop. You have to find out if you write down here 1, that would be not allowed. So white space is not allowed because you know the naming rules of an identifier. Yeah, underscore is allowed, that you can put. Dollar is also allowed, that also we can put here. And number this label should also be started from like either dollar or any like ABCD alphabets. It cannot start from digit. Yeah, digit we can use between these number like outer two loop, that is allowed. So numbers we can use, but at starting we cannot use numbers. At starting we can start the number with underscore, that is allowed. And with dollar, that thing is also allowed. So these are some naming rules. We have already discussed these naming rules. I hope you know in the previous videos. So I'm just naming it. I'm just labeling it as outer loop colon, and for inner loop, let's label it inner loop and colon. Both the loops I have labeled properly. Now the scope of this outer loop is from starting to ending, and the inner loop scope is from here for the inner loop only. So you have to take care of the scope as well. Now it's if I becomes 1 and j becomes 1, then we are breaking from the outer loop. We are using labeled. I want to break from outer loop. So let's run this and see the difference between the output. See, I is 1, j1, then 0 1, then 0 2, then 1 0. And once I becomes 1 and j also becomes 1, then breaking. Okay, we are printing here inner loop, but we should change it and we should print here breaking both the loops. So we can change it and we can write here breaking both loops. And now you run this and see the output and notice the difference between the output. Now as soon as I becomes 1, j becomes 1, it hit the condition, then breaking both the loops. Further, no iteration of the outer loop as well, because we are out from outer loop as well. We are using here labeled break. So this is how we can use if we have more than one, we have nested loops 1 2 3 4 5, any level of nesting. And if a specific condition hit, I want to exit from all the loops, from the outermost loop as well. In that case, we use labeled break just to exit from all the loops. So let's just comment out this code, and I just want to show you one more thing. We can use this labeled break with if. Say this was giving an error because we cannot use break with simple if, but we can use labeled break, that is fine. So if I label this if also, any name you can take, like I'm taking the name, label if, that's it. Any valid identifier name you can take. If a is equal to 5, then simply we can use break and label if. This will work, this will not give any error. Although we are not using here like any particular logic or in any sense, we are not using this label if, but I just want to show you that yeah, labeled break statement we can use with if, that will not give you any error. If in some cases you get, or in these kind of scenarios if you want to use, then you can use labeled break within simple if. No need to write down like those we can say for or switch enclosing this if. We can use labeled if here simply. Okay, as you can see here, we are not getting any error. Now let's take one more example. Here also we are using within if labeled break. So the example is we are taking simply a number, that is I'm initializing this number here only, that is 4. You can take input from user as well using scanner, that is up to you, but here I'm using only initializing it here, and I'm labeling it this if with a label that is outer. If I'm checking the condition, if number is greater than 0, then it will print first number is positive, and then within this I'm using nested if else. So I'm going to check number mode 2 equal to 0, then just print number is even, else number is odd, and break. In else part using break outer. labeled break outer. So it will be out from the complete if, right? And then we are printing, this will only print if the number is even. And after this if body, outer if, then we simply print this as outside the labeled block. This is the labeled block, right? So the outer scope is within this block. We can use this outer from this to this in within this complete. This is the scope of this label. So pause the video and you can try out. You can think what output you will get. Try to dry run this and what output you should give. After that, you just run this and see what kind of output you tell your answer. So what output you will get here? See, at first it will print number is positive because that is 4. That is for sure. Now 4 more to equal to 0. Yes, this condition is also true, right? Now this condition would be checked because this is within the outer if. So now if it is true, it will print again the next line, that is number is even, because we are going to enter into this if block. Now at this point of time, the control will not enter into this else block because if condition is true. So only one block would be either if or else would be executed. That is for sure. After that, this line would be printed. Control will go because outside of if else, and then the next line would be printed. So let's run this and see. Number is positive, number is even, then this line, and then outside level block, all the 4 lines. Okay, now let's change the number, that is 3. Now 3 is odd number. So first condition is always true, number is greater than 0. So it would be printed, but this condition is not true. So the control will go into this else block. So number is odd would be printed, and then break outer means we are out from the complete if from this block. So this line, this will only print if the number is even. This will not be executed this time because as soon as we find break, we are completely out of this outer block, right? It will simply print that line outside the labeled block. This will only print if the number is even. This line would only be printed if the number is even. Okay, let's run this and see the difference in output. Is positive, is odd, and that this is outside the labeled block. So this is the difference. This is how we are using here labeled, labeled, you can say break within if also. So you can try this out, and this outer is having the scope with this only. If you want to use this outer outside of this scope, because label is also having their scope, right, then you will get error. So if you print something like this, if number is equal to 3, and here I just want to use labeled break. So just print here in system.out.println. Let's print something that is outside outer label, or anything you can print. Okay, and let's use break outer, but it will give you error. See the red line below the outer label, undefined label outer. Although we have defined this outer, but here it is showing undefined label because the scope is within this if closing parenthesis, and we are using this outer outside of this scope. This is the scope of this outer label. We have already discussed now variable scope, and also the same rules are applied to label also. That's why it is giving you error like undefined this outer label. So this also you need to take care of this thing. Okay, let's just delete this, and I hope we are done with the break and labeled break statement. Oh, let me show you one more thing. Let's just comment out this code, and we have this code, inner loop and outer loop. These are nested loops, so we are using here inner loop. So this inner loop scope is this only. Within this only we can use this inner loop. Outer we cannot use outside of this scope. So if outside of this I want to use this, let's put some condition, any condition we can take. If I is equal to 3, then simply use break inner loop, but this will give you error. As we know the scope rule we have already defined. So inner loop, same undefined inner loop here also, because we are using this out of the scope. So this also you need to take care when you are using label kind of thing. Fine. So the next is continue statement. The name suggests continue. So it will just bypass the current iteration and continue with the next iteration. Break means it is going to exit from the enclosing loop or anything. No next further any iteration would be, the loop would not be iterated for next iterations. But continue means it will only skip the current iteration and it will continue with the next iteration. You will get this the meaning of this line when we will use this kind of practical examples. But let's take one more example. If you are watching the lectures like 1 2 3 like this lectures, and if somewhere you stuck any one lecture you are not getting, it's not like that you will completely break out of the course. Means I don't want to study further. If in any one lecture you got a problem or you are not getting anything, then break from the complete course. No further I want to study. I don't want to study further. No, you can simply skip that part maybe for later discussion and then you continue with the next lecture. We everybody do this kind of thing, especially students. If you're not getting any one concept or any one any unit or any topic, you just skip that and continue with the next one, right? Something like this. So it is used to skip. See the names it suggests continue it, so it is used to skip the rest of the current iteration in the loop and move to the next iteration, right? Now what is it is saying, so let me show you this thing with this example. We have a loop here. We have first I is 0. This condition true? Yes. We are entering into the loop. Now you know the working of loops. Is this condition true? No. So we'll not enter into this if block. No. We will be, the control would be here out of this if within this for. So current value, it will print 0. Right? Now I plus plus. I becomes 1. Is this condition true? Yes. 1 is less than 5. Enter into this loop. Is this condition true? No. Fine. Whatever is there after this if, that line would be executed, that is 1 would be printed. Again I plus plus. Now I becomes 2. Is this condition true? 2 less than 5? Yes. Again now enter into this loop. Now is this condition true? Yes. Because I is 2. 2 equal to 2. Yes, condition is true. Enter here within this if block. Within this if block, what is there? Continue statement. Continue means skip this iteration. For is this loop, skip this iteration and now directly jump to I plus plus for the next iteration. I becomes now 3. Skip means whatever is there. So this statement was there. Within this loop, we were having this statement. So this statement would be skipped, would not be executed for the current iteration only. And control will move or continue with the next iteration of the loop. So for I equal to 2, this line would not be executed for this iteration. And I plus plus. Now I becomes 3. Is this condition true? Yes. Enter here. This condition not true. So control will be here and I3 would be printed. I plus plus, now I becomes 4. Now 4 would be printed and I becomes 5. Now this condition is not true. So exit from this loop. So 0, 1, 3, 4. 2 would be skipped like this. If you want to skip something based on some condition, we don't want to exit from that loop completely, but you want to skip some iterations only in some scenarios. Then rather than using break, we use continue. That's it. If for a specific condition, once a specific condition met, you want to exit from the loop, you don't want to continue with the loop iteration, then use break. But if you want to skip for some iterations only of that loop, then you can use continue. So this can be used continue with looping statements, for, while, do, while. We cannot use this with switch. And same, we cannot use this with simple if. Okay, labeled continue, maybe we can use that, we will see later. But Simple continue we cannot use with switch. So it's with switch and with if also, right? So so continue basically helps in loop optimization. If you want to skip some unnecessary iteration, then you can use continue to skip those to improve the performance of your code. Like input validation. Like if your user is entering something or filling a form, then if there is any invalid entry, then you would just skip that and let's take another input. You just skip that invalid entry and continue processing that thing. This kind of thing, right? There we use continue. And yeah, definitely it is going to increase the readability. It can make the code more readable by avoiding deeply nested conditional structures within loop. Okay. Because if you don't use continue, then if you want to skip some part there, you have to use conditional statements, if else and all. But rather than using that, you can simply use continue to skip that part. Right. So I hope the working of continue is clear to you. Now, where basically we use continue? Filtering data. When we are processing a large data set or database, in that case, if you want to skip some elements that do not meet a certain criteria, like exams, when you are calculating or in this kind of thing, this is what transaction. But for student also, if you are doing some calculation or something on students, then you can put a condition. If a student is having less than 40 marks, then skip that. We are not going to add these marks in those. We are going to add the marks of the students only who are having more than 40 marks. So to skip those student marks, you can use continue, right? Here also in a financial application also, we can use continue to skip transaction below a certain amount when you are calculating total sales, right? Input validation, this thing also I have told you. If you want to skip invalid input, then you can use continue, right? Rather than exiting the entire input loop. Okay. Now, okay, resource management. There are many examples. There are many examples of using continue in real life also. These are a few of them. So when you are iterating through a list of resources, like you are reading files or databases or connections, data from files. So if a file is empty or a file is having some invalid data, you skip processing that file and continue with the next file. Something like this. Right? So there we can use continue. If I'm checking your assignment or I'm checking exam copy of students, and if there is some invalid or some wrong answer, so it's not like that I'll stop checking the answer sheet of that student. If the answer is not valid, I'll just give 0 marks and continue with the next question with the next answer. That's it. Right? So this is kind of example of continue statements. Right? Now, same we have labeled continue. So same we have like labeled for, like this we have labeled continue statement. If you want to continue a specific loop, like specific, same with the nested loops are there. If you simply use continue, it will skip the current iteration of inner loop only, not the outer loop. But if you want to skip the current iteration of outer loop as well, then you can use labeled continue. And the syntax is same. Simply you'll put a label and here continue, and after that the same label. That you can use labeled continue in this cases. So let's see continue and labeled continue with programs. So let's take the same example here. Rather than break, we are using continue. We are printing from 1 to 10, but we have changed one thing only. We are using here continue. So let's run this and see the difference in the output. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 5 is not there. Because as soon as it hit the condition that I is equal to 5, continue. Continue means skip the current iteration and go for the next iteration, right? So this line would be skipped and we will go to the next iteration now. That's why the 5 is not there in the output, right? So this is the difference between break and continue. We are not completely exiting from that loop. We are just skipping the current iteration. Okay. So and continuing for after the next iteration. So here just we'll simply want to print one thing. You have to write down this program. This is one exercise for you. Write a program to print even numbers using continue. Okay, means 2, 4, 6, from 1 to 10, whatever even number is there, you have to print. And if you get any odd number, skip that number. And how to skip that, now. We have continue. So you can now pause the video and think a little bit about this, and then continue watching this video. So I hope you have done this. See, 1 to 10 we want to print even number. Even number means the numbers are divisible by, completely divisible by 2. So in this condition, the condition is I equal to 5. Here you need to change the condition. If I mod 2 equal to sorry, not equal to 0, then continue. Means those number I want to skip. If this is the case, then definitely that is odd number. So just skip for that iteration and continue with the next iteration. That's it. You have to change this condition only. It was simple. Let's run this and see. See the even number 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Now you have to change one thing. You have to write down a program to print odd numbers using continue. So this is for you. Again, pause the video and try this out. If even number found, then simply you have to change this condition only a little bit. So rather than here, what we can do, rather than not equal to 0, you have to write down here equal to 0. Means that is an even number and you have to skip even number. And that's continue. So it will print odd number only 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. I hope you got this. These are not that much tough. We just have to change the condition only. So this is how continue works. So now let's comment out this code and I'll show you the continue will not work with if. Let's just uncomment our code, remove this label, and we will simply write down here simple continue statement. But it will give you error because we cannot use continue with if. Continue is basically for loops. We cannot use continue with switch as well as in if. We can use only with loops only. So see, this will give you error. If you can see the red line here. But labeled if also, labeled continue also we cannot use with if. Labeled break we can use with if, but labeled continue will also give you error. If you change here, like if I write here the label if, the name is this, colon, and then continue, label if. Still you are getting error. See, not a loop here, label if. So continue is basically for the next iteration. Skip the current iteration, go for next iteration. But in if there is no like iteration kind of thing. Now let's see one more example, that is for nested for. So the outer loop we have here, I'm just printing outer loop iteration, whatever the iteration is, I just to get you more readability about the code, the output. I'm printing this outer loop iteration and let's just delete this label because we are simply writing here continue, not labeled continue. Inner loop is from 1 to 5, j plus plus, and then if j is equal to 3, then we simply print skipping outer loop iteration when j is equal to this. But here we are not skipping outer loop, we are skipping inner loop only because we are using here continue, not labeled continue. So simply use here skipping inner loop iteration, continue. It will only skip the innermost loop iteration, current iteration, and go for the next iteration. It will not skip the outer loop iteration, right? It will skip the innermost loop iteration where we are using this continue. That is for sure. Same with label we have. Same working is there, right? And if you want to skip the iteration of the outer loop, then we have a solution that we can use labeled continue. But for now, we are just skipping this innermost loop iteration and we are simply printing that inner loop iteration and then j. So both iteration we are printing I and j. You will get the better idea when you get the output. So now let's we just start running this and let's see the what kind of output you are getting here. Let's run this. See, okay, the program, this output is a little bit lengthy. So let's change the number of iteration till 3 and we make it also 3 so that we get a shorter output and j is equal to 2, then continue. Okay, let's run this and see now the output. First, it will print outer loop iteration 1. Let me just adjust a little bit so that you get an idea of both the things. What is the program and what is the output? So, outer loop iteration, first I was 1, so 1 would be printed. Then j is 1, condition true, yes. Again, we will enter into this inner loop and then j is equal to 2, that is not true. So, we will not, control will not enter into this if block, right? Because j is still 1. So, out of this if, whatever is written there, just after this if, we have written, we are just printing inner loop iteration and j. So, it will print inner loop iteration 1. J value is because 1 now, right? Now, it becomes j plus plus. See, after printing this inner loop iteration, now it will become j plus plus and j becomes now 2. We are still in the inner loop. We are not in outer loop. So, j plus plus. J becomes 2. 2 less than equal to 3. Yes, condition again true. We will enter here. Now, if j is equal to true, this condition is true. So, we will enter into this if block, right? And then what line would be printed first? Skipping the inner loop iteration, right? And then again continue. See, now for the j is equal to 2 for the next iteration, for the outer loop next iteration, and like this you are getting the output. So I hope you got the working of now continue with this nested loop, right? Now if you want to exit, if you want to continue outer loop, then we can use labeled continue. So let's label it same outer loop, and rather than continue we use continue outer loop. Let's run this and now see the difference in output. It will print outer loop iteration 1, then j becomes 1, condition true, it will enter here and simply print inner loop iteration 1, right? Then j becomes 2, now condition is true, j equal to true. Now here it will simply print skipping, not inner loop, it should be outer loop iteration because we are skipping at this point of time outer loop. We are using label breaker. Let me just change it to outer. And now let's run this again and see. Here we are getting at this point of time outer loop iteration. So we have skipped the outer loop iteration, right? This line would not be printed. Inner loop iteration j, nothing else would be printed, right? And now I plus, simply I plus plus would be done. I becomes 2 now. So the next line would be outer loop iteration equal to is 2. After 1 directly, after printing skipping outer loop iteration when j is equal to 2, simply outer loop iteration 2. So I hope you are able to find out the difference between the previous output and this output in continue and labeled continue. Okay, here it is skipping the current iteration of the outer loop and just go for the next iteration. Fine. Two rules are there for this outer loop, for this label that we have discussed already when we are using break. So this outer loop, this label is, the scope of this is for this outer for loop. And we can also label a block of code. We can label like the looping statements or conditional statements, when we can also label a block of code. Block of code means whatever is written within those brackets, parentheses. So just suppose, let's take an example. We are writing a label block. The name is this and the block is this. In opening and closing parentheses, we can write down anything. Simply system.out.println any statement or any conditional or loop or anything. But this is now a block of code and we have labeled it label block. So this is also allowed. This is known as labeled statement in Java. So labeled statement It's a way to define a label for a block of code or loop or conditional statements. It is just used to identify the block of code, right? Basically, it is making it easier to control the flow of execution, especially in nested loops. But this is not allowed. Declaration statement, int age equal to 4, this is a declaration statement. So it is not an executable statement basically. It is saying not a statement. According to the JLS specifications or the grammar rules, int age equal to 4, this is a declaration. So it is not an executable statement. And label, here after label, what is the general syntax? We write label, then colon, and then we simply write any statement. So that statement can be a loop, a block of code, or any executable statement. Yeah, this is fine. If I write int a is equal to this, and I'm just assigning the value a equal to 4. This is valid. This is an executable statement. So we can use label here. This is known as labeled statement. This will work fine. But a declaration statement, before declaration statement, we cannot put a label, because declaration statement in Java is not an executable statement, right? As I've told you, the syntax is we simply write any label, any name you can take, then colon, then statement. This statement can be any loop, can be a block of code, or any executable statement basically, but not declaration statement. It can be an expression statement as well. So this is more about labeled statement, but we don't have to go into that much deep in labeled statement. You just have to a simple idea about labeled. Yeah, there is a labeled break, there is a labeled continue, and this is how we can use labeled break and continue. Okay, let's take one more example here. And in this example, same example, I am writing both continue and break. So this is the thing. You pause the video and try to think what output you will get. Here we are taking a number simply, while num less than 20, num plus plus. Then if number is less than equal to 7, then continue. And after that, just print whatever the number is. And then if number is greater than equal to 15, then break the loop. Okay. So that is not that much tough. I hope you can identify, you can find out like what output you will get here. So first dry run this and then run this and tell your answer. You are getting the exact output or not. So I hope you have done this. Let's run this and see. See, number 8, 9, 10 until 15 it is printing. Because at first number was 0. So condition true, num plus plus, num becomes 1. If 1 less than equal to 7, yes, condition true. Then continue. Continue means skipping all these lines for this iteration. Whatever is there in this loop after continue, any statement, those would be skipped for the current iteration. And then we will move to the continue with the next iteration. So again, control will go to the while loop condition. So num was 1, 1 less than equal to 20. Yes, condition true. Now num becomes 2. 2 less than equal to 7. Again, continue. Again, skip the next part and go for the next iteration. Like this. So till 7, we are going to skip. Nothing would be printed. Once num becomes 8, then this condition is not true and then this line would be executed. Then number would be printed 8. And then next condition would be checked. If number greater than equal to 15, then break only. So till 15, you will get the number. And once number becomes 15, then first it will print the number and then it will check the condition. Number is 15. Yes, the break condition is true after printing the number. Then break. Break means exit from the loop. So till 15, we will get the output and then it is going to break from this loop, exit from the loop. And what if you modify this code a little bit? If I add this line after this if, after break, then what output you will get? Let's run this and see. Now it is printing only from 8 to 14, not 15. I hope you got this. That is not that much tough. Because once number becomes 15, so first it will check this condition. This condition is true. then break. So this line, it will not able to print the line, that is the number, that is 15. So I have told you when to use this labeled continue statement. It is particularly used when you need to skip iteration of an outer loop based on some condition written in inner loop. And these are useful in complex iteration when we are having more than like nested loops, 5, 6, 7, many level of loops. And there if you use labeled statement, then it would be more clear. See, this would be more clear that we are exiting from the outer loop from this label. Although we are having only two loops, but maybe you are having 3, 4, 5, 6 nested loops, a deep nested structure. Then in those complex iteration, it's always better to use like labeled statement, labeled continue or labeled break, just to be to get the or to become the to make the your program more readable, more manageable, right? Code optimization means by skipping the unnecessary iteration, you can optimize the performance and you can optimize the code using continue statement. So I guess this is clear to you, but there are some common pitfalls with break and continue. Infinite loop can be there, so you have to properly place your break and continue statement to avoid infinite loops. Do not excessively use break and continue, otherwise code would be very complex and you will not get the working of the code, right? So don't overuse these things. And unreachable code, that I have told you, whatever you will write after the break and continue, just after break and continue, those statement would be unreachable, so some kind of error you will get. This thing also you need to take care, right? Now, why, how to use these break and continue statements? Basically, I've told you overuse is not good. Overuse of break and continue can make the code harder to follow and understand. So you have to use, like, you have to use them when you need it or when possible only. Then only use that. Use break and continue statement. And clear comments. When you are using these labeled or any break or continue statement, just in comment, just write down the description. Like we are using this for this block or this for this block. So that when a human want to read that code, so by you looking at that comment or the descriptive comment, he or she will able to understand, okay, this line is for this label break is for this, something like this. So you have to write clear comments when you are using break and continue, especially in complex situations, nested structures, right? Consistent labeling, like it means you have to use a consistent naming convention, like there is a loop and within this we have one more loop. So generally we label this outer loop, we label this inner loop. It's not like that for this loop I'm using inner loop and for this I'm using outer loop, although it will not give any error because these are valid Java identifier, a b c x y z, anything you can use. But ok, we know this is outer loop and this is within this loop, so it's always better to name it consistently. Outer loop, inner loop, or if you are having three loops, within this we have one more loop, so outermost loop, like this, outer loop, inner loop, this kind of naming you have to do while labeling. So you have to take care of this thing also. The labeling would be consistent, a descriptive, and more understandable. Not just simple write a, name of label is a. No, although it will not give any error, but avoid these kind of labels. Okay, now that's all about jump statement. Return statement we will see when we are discussing methods, right? So now in the next video, we will see one more exercise or kind of project. There we use the continue and break statement. Okay. So now I will see you the next lecture. Till then, bye bye. Take care.